Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we try to make sense of complex sources and, well, give you the shortcuts.
That's the plan.
Today, we're taking a bit of an unexpected turn, actually. We're digging into the global dirt bike tire market.
Dirt bike tires, yeah. Sounds niche, maybe.
It sounds niche, but wait till you hear the numbers. Our source for this is a big market forecast report from Cognitive Market Research.
Right, and our mission today is really to unpack what's inside that report. We want to look at the trends, figure out where the growth is coming from.
And who the key players are, regionally speaking.
Exactly, and hopefully find those aha moments, see how something like dirt bike tires can actually tell us a lot about bigger economic forces.
Okay, let's get straight to the scale then, because it is genuinely surprising. This market, just for dirt bike tires, was valued at over $1.4 billion back in 2021.
Already huge.
Already huge.
Yeah.
And it's projected to hit over $1.7 billion by 2025.
Okay.
Then, get this, it's expected to climb to almost $2.5 billion by 2033. That's an overall compound annual growth rate, a CAGR of 4.7%.
So, steady growth overall.
Steady, but leading to almost $2.5 billion. Just for the tires you put on a dirt bike. It's quite something.
It really is. And what the report really breaks down nicely is how that growth isn't uniform across the globe. Different regions are moving at very different speeds.
Yeah, some are really driving things more than others.
Definitely. It paints a fascinating picture, really.
Okay, so let's get into those regions. Where does it get really interesting? You mentioned differing speeds.
Well, the big headline has to be Asia Pacific. That region is absolutely leading the charge in terms of growth rate.
Leading the charge. Okay. Let's see the number.
Right. So Asia Pacific started around $315 million in 2021.
Okay.
By 2025, that's projected to be over $414 million.
That's a big jump.
And then by 2033, nearly $700 million, just shy of $700 million.
Doubling almost from 2021.
Pretty much. And that gives it a regional CAGR of over 6.7%, which is, well, it's impressive.
6.7%. That's significantly higher than the global average you mentioned. What's behind that? Which countries are pushing it?
Great question. The report points to a few key players. China, India, and Japan are the big ones there.
Okay.
China's market is already large, and it's projected to keep growing at just over 7% annually.
Right.
So by 2033, that's over $276 million.
Still very strong growth.
Very strong. But India actually has the highest country-specific CAGR in the entire report.
Really? How high?
Over 7.3%, just phenomenal growth, projected to reach almost $125 million by 2033.
Wow. Okay. So what's driving that kind of expansion in places like India and China? Is it just more bikes?
It seems to be more than that. The report suggests it links up with, rising disposable incomes, a growing middle class.
People looking for new ways to spend their leisure time.
Exactly. Adventure activities, recreation, and maybe even things like better infrastructure making off-road riding more accessible in some areas. That could be part of it too.
Makes sense. And it's not just them, right?
Yeah.
Other countries.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Japan's also significant, growing at around 6.6%. South Korea, Australia, both showing strong CGRs, over 5.9 and 6.8% respectively. Even smaller markets like Southeast Asia, Singapore, Taiwan, they're all contributing with solid growth rates, mostly in the 6 to 6.5% range.
So a really dynamic picture across Asia Pacific.
Absolutely. It's the growth engine right now for this market.
Okay, let's shift gears then. What about North America? It's traditionally a big market for motorsports.
It is, and it's still a huge contributor in terms of overall value. Just the growth curve is, let's say, more mature than Asia Pacific.
Right. So what are the figures there?
North America generated over $470 million back in 2021. The forecast puts it at about $553 million by 2025.
Okay.
And reaching nearly $745 million by 2033.
Still very substantial numbers.
Definitely. But the regional CGR reflects that maturity. It's just under 3.8%.
So steady but slower than APAC. How does it break down within North America? The U.S. must be dominant.
Oh, absolutely. The United States has the largest single country market share globally, actually. It was over $340 million in 2021.
Wow.
Projected to reach almost $530 million by 2033. The CAGR there is about 3.7%, roughly in line with the region.
And Canada and Mexico?
They're solid contributors, too. Canada's looking at about $118 million by 2033, and interestingly, its CAGR is a bit higher than the U.S. at over 4.1%.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And Mexico is also growing steadily, around 3.9% CAGR, hitting close to $97 million by 2033.
So North America is less about explosive new growth and more about Existing riders replacing tires.
Hmm.
A stable culture.
That seems to be the picture, yeah. A large established base of enthusiasts, regular replacement cycles, a strong off-road sports culture. Less about rapid expansion, more about sustained demand.
Got it. Okay, let's cross the Atlantic. What about Europe? How does it fit into this global picture?
Europe is another major player, very significant market share. Its value was around $415 million in 2021.
Similar to North America, then.
Very similar in starting value, yes. It's projected to grow to about $481 million by 2025, and then over $672 million by 2033.
And the growth rate.
The regional CAGR for Europe is actually a bit higher than North America's, coming in at nearly 4.3%.
Okay, so steadier growth, but maybe a little more dynamic than North America. Who are the key countries in Europe?
It's quite diverse. Germany leads the pack there, projected to hit almost $150 million by 2033, and its CAGR is strong, over 4.6%.
Right.
The UK is also very significant, forecasted around $118 million by 2033. France, Italy, both substantial markets expected to be around $90 million and $70 million respectively by 2033.
And their growth rates.
Pretty consistent. The UK is around 4%, France slightly higher, Italy around 4.5%. We see similar patterns across other countries too, Russia, Spain, even smaller ones like Sweden, Denmark, Switzerland. They're mostly clustering around that 4 to 4.5% TGR mark.
So widespread, stable demand across Europe.
Yeah, it suggests like North America, established recreational markets, but maybe with slightly stronger growth momentum overall, a robust consumer base pretty much everywhere.
Okay. Let's head south now. What's the story in South America?
South America shows consistent growth, though, on a smaller scale than the big three regions we've discussed.
Makes sense. What are the numbers?
It started just over $100 million in 2021. It's projected to reach about $123 million by 2025, and then over $168 million by 2033.
And the regional growth?
The CAGR for South America is nearly 4%, 3.955% to be exact, so pretty solid.
Who's leading the way there? Brazil.
Brazil is definitely the largest market in South America. It's expected to reach over $85 million by 2033, with the CAGR slightly above the regional average, almost 4.2%.
Okay.
Argentina is also showing strong performance, projected near $33 million, growing at about 4%. Then you have Colombia, Peru, Chile, all contributing steadily, mostly around the 3.8 to 3.9% mark. Consistent, if not spectacular, growth.
So South America seems like a region with developing interest, maybe echoing some of those leisure trends we saw in Asia, but just a bit slower.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. Growing interest, expanding market, but perhaps not at the same breakneck speed as parts of Asia-Pacific. There's also a rest of South America category growing much slower, around 2%, pulling the average down slightly.
Interesting nuance. Okay, two regions left. The Middle East.
The Middle East is what the report classifies as an emerging region in this context. It generated about $64 million in 2021.
Right.
Forecasted to hit roughly $74 million by 2025 and just over $100 million by 2033.
So crossing that $100 million mark? And the growth rate?
The regional CGR is actually quite healthy, over 4%, about 4.08%.
Similar to Europe and South America, then, in terms of growth base?
Pretty much, yeah. Saudi Arabia is the biggest market there, projected to reach over $40 million by 2033. Turkey actually shows particularly strong growth within the region, with a CAGR over 4.4%. The UAE is also robust at around 4.3%. Egypt and Qatar are a bit smaller, but growing around 4% too.
So even though it's smaller overall, the Middle East is showing decent momentum.
It is. The report doesn't spell out the drivers explicitly for this region, but you can probably infer, growing interest in motorsports may be linked to increasing discretionary spending in some of those economies.
Makes sense. And finally, Africa.
Africa is also flagged as emerging, but it has the most modest growth rate of all the regions covered.
Okay, what are we looking at?
It started from about $58.5 million in 2021, projected to get to nearly $67 million by 2025, and then just under $90 million by 2033.
So the smallest region in terms of value as well.
Yes, and the regional CGR reflects that slower pace. It's about 3.66%, the lowest of all regions.
How does it break down within Africa?
South Africa is the main market by far, expected to be nearly $54 million by 2033, growing at about 3.7%, so slightly above the regional average.
Right.
Nigeria is the other main country listed, growing to almost $18 million, with a CAGR just over 3.6%. The rest of Africa category also shows similar, slightly slower growth.
So there's growth, but it's more contained compared to elsewhere.
Exactly. It indicates an expanding market,
Yeah.
likely driven by specific localized demand, but not the widespread acceleration we're seeing in some other developing regions yet.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot of numbers, a lot of regions. Thanks for breaking that down.
Yeah.
So stepping back, what does this all mean when
Yeah.
you put all these pieces together?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway, the headline story really, is that dynamic shift we talked about.
The Asia-Pacific growth story.
Exactly. North America might have been the biggest single block in 2021 in terms of dollars,
Right.
but Asia Pacific, with that much higher CAGR, is clearly closing the gap fast. And it's projected to be the engine room for growth over the next decade. That says a lot about broader economic shifts, doesn't it? New consumer power emerging.
It really does. And the range in those growth rates is fascinating, too. You've got India booming at over 7.3%.
Yeah.
And then, the rest of South America growing at only 2%.
Precisely. And that's what's so interesting about digging into a niche like this dirt bike tires, right? It seems so specific.
Totally.
But it actually acts like a lens. It illuminates these bigger economic trends, different patterns of regional development, maybe even changing lifestyles across the globe. It makes you wonder, what exactly are the underlying factors? What specific societal changes or economic policies are turbocharging growth in a place like India compared to the more stable, mature markets like the US or Germany?
That's a great point. It's genuinely remarkable how a market that seems so, specific can tell such a big story about global economics and even culture.
Absolutely. And maybe that's the final thought for you, the listener, to consider. Think about how growth in these seemingly small corners of the economy,
Like dirt bike tires.
like dirt bike tires, can actually mirror huge shifts. Shifts in leisure time, disposable income, especially in developing nations, maybe even infrastructure projects that open up new areas for recreation. It just reminds us, doesn't it? Every market, however niche it looks, is tangled up in the bigger economic and social web.
The unique window into global change.
Exactly. Always more going on beneath the surface numbers.
Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're exploring the global dirt bike tire market. Now, it might sound niche, but there's actually a lot going on here. Significant changes, tech advancements. So our mission, as always, is to really unpack the core insights. What's driving it? What's holding it back? Where's it headed? And we're drawing these insights from a great report by Cognitive Market Research. Really solid stuff.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here, I think, is how complex it gets. You look at a tire, seems simple, right? Just rubber for dirt. But it's actually sitting right at the intersection of advanced engineering, environmental concerns, and what riders expect these days. It's intricate.
Totally agree. Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start with demand. What's really powering the growth right now? We're definitely seeing this huge push for terrain-specific customization. Is that just the pros? Or is your average rider now expecting, tires tailored for sand versus mud versus rocks?
Oh, it's absolutely broader now. It's not just the elite riders anymore. Everyday enthusiasts, they want gear that matches exactly where and how they ride. And this demand, it directly pushes manufacturers. They have to innovate. We're talking really specific performance needs. Think about sand tires need those big paddle treads, right, for pure traction. But rock tires, they need to resist punctures, be kind of pliable to grip weird angles. That kind of tailoring makes a real difference in performance and safety for everyone.
Right, makes sense. And beyond just performance, there seems to be another big driver, sustainability. Are we actually seeing a real shift towards eco-friendly tires in this space? Seems kind of specific for that.
We really are. It's significant. Manufacturers are actively putting R&D money into biodegradable options, recyclable materials. And look, this isn't just greenwashing, It's strategic. It aligns with these bigger global green movements. Consumers care more. And even niche industries like this have to respond. They're looking at the whole life cycle of the tire now.
Huh. That's actually pretty forward-thinking for what you might assume is a traditional kind of market. And all this innovation is happening while, off-road biking itself just keeps getting more popular, right, worldwide. Plus, you mentioned those cross-functional innovations, better durability, grip. How's that helping, say, amateur riders specifically?
Oh, in big ways. You're seeing tech borrowed from other areas, like maybe sealant tech from mountain bikes to handle punctures better, makes riders more confident, or even adopting ideas like run flat tech, which used to be more for military vehicles. Imagine hitting something miles from anywhere. That capability gives amateurs peace of mind.
Yeah, okay. Less worry about getting stranded.
Exactly. It's not just tiny tweaks. These things genuinely improve the whole riding experience, especially if you're not a pro mechanic. So if you pull all these drivers together, What you get is this really sophisticated demand picture. Riders want specialized performance, they're more aware of the environment, and the user base is growing and expecting more. That's why it matters. The market isn't just growing, it's getting smarter, more demanding, needs a smart response.
Okay, so it sounds like a market with a lot of momentum, dynamic. But, every market has its breaks, its challenges.
Right.
So what are the hurdles? What's slowing things down for dirt bike tires? Here's where it gets really interesting. Well, first off, the cost, right? Premium tires aren't cheap. We're talking advanced materials, complex R&D for specific conditions, fancy tread designs. That adds up.
Definitely. Those costs can make the really high-performance stuff less accessible, especially for riders on a tighter budget.
And then there's just the nature of the sport, frequent replacements. Anyone who rides hard knows this. You chew through tires on rugged trails.
Mm-hmm. It's a constant expense. A tire budget is a real thing for serious riders.
Yeah, exactly. And tied into that, you've got economic volatility. When the economy gets shaky, people cut back on hobbies, right? Recreational spending.
Absolutely. Recessions, financial uncertainty, that hits niche markets like this directly. People might hold off on buying new tires, maybe even ride less.
Yeah.
And these things are connected, high cost plus frequent replacement. That gets even tougher when money's tight generally. It can make people choose maybe less ideal, longer lasting tires instead of the best performance ones, or even push them towards like the used market.
Right. And it forces compromises.
It really does. It forces manufacturers to think about different price points too and how they market durability versus pure performance. It shapes strategy.
Okay, so we have the drivers pushing forward, the restraints hitting the brakes. So what does this all mean? Looking ahead, what are the key trends shaping the future here?
Well, that sustainability piece we talked about, that's not going away. It's only getting stronger. It's really driving innovation in materials and manufacturing. Finding ways to reduce the environmental footprint is becoming table stakes almost.
Okay, so sustainability is core. What else? You mentioned customization earlier. Is that intensifying?
Yes, definitely. Extreme terrain specialization is the next level. Riders are demanding tires dialed in for super specific conditions. Think like alpine gravel, or deep, loamy forest soil, or those insane hard enduro obstacles.
Wow, so manufacturers need an even wider range of products now.
Exactly. Bigger portfolios, much more technical precision needed in design and production. And the engineering challenges there are pretty intense. Getting the rubber compound right for, say, wet rocks versus dry sand, totally different. Balancing grip with durability. Always a trade-off. It's complex stuff.
And what about how people actually buy these tires? Is digital changing things? Platforms for, research, maybe online customization, getting feedback from other riders?
Oh, massively. Digital is transforming customer engagement. You can research way more easily now, compare specs, read reviews. Some brands are offering online tools to help you pick the right tire, maybe even customize aspects. And that community feedback loop, it's gold for manufacturers and helps other riders make informed choices.
So it's more interactive now.
Totally. It makes the whole buying process more dynamic, more engaging. It's not just picking something off a shelf. You feel more connected, more informed, builds loyalty too.
Interesting. Okay, let's shift to the companies themselves.
Yeah.
The competitive landscape.
Right.
You said it's fragmented. What does that look like on the ground?
It means it's really dynamic. No single player totally dominates everywhere. You've got the big global names, sure, Michelin, Pirelli, Dunlop, etc. But you also have strong regional players, sometimes specialists in certain types of tires.
And they're all fighting it out.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Competing on price, obviously, but also on that terrain compatibility we discussed, durability, brand image.
So how are they trying to get an edge?
Yeah.
Lots of new product launches, mergers.
All of the above. Strategic alliances, definitely mergers and acquisitions to gain scale or tech. And yes, constant product innovation is key. You have to keep bringing out better, more specialized tires. We connect this to the bigger picture. This fragmentation forces innovation. Companies have to keep pushing to stand out, which, end of the day, is good for riders, more choice, better tech.
Makes sense. And are they getting smarter operationally, too? Especially after, the pandemic messed with supply chains.
Absolutely. Enhancing operational efficiency, getting their digital houses in order, that became critical. You're seeing a lot more focus on resilient supply chains, better inventory management.
And thinking strategically, like
Yeah.
using SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
Yeah. The top players definitely are. You have to in this market. You need to understand your own position, anticipate market shifts, know where the opportunities are, like sustainability or specific niches. Performance, customization, resilience, those are the key words. It just reflects how much adaptation is needed. It's not static. You have to keep evolving with the riders in the world around you.
Right. It's a constantly moving target. Well, that pretty much wraps up our deep dive into the global dirt bike tire market. It's clear that with all this innovation and a growing demanding router base, this market is really moving fast.
It really is. It's a great example, I think, of how even a specialized product evolves. It pushes manufacturers to be more innovative, more responsive, and yeah, more responsible too.
Absolutely. Okay, here's a final thought to leave you with.
What?
Given this intense focus on personalized terrain-specific tires and the big push for sustainable options, how might those digital platforms we talked about evolve? Could they go beyond just selling tires? Could we see platforms where riders actually help co-design their tires in real time? Maybe even getting data up front about the environmental impact of their choices before they even hit the trail. Something to mull over. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.